is Barry McKeon. And as I mentioned in some of the articles I wrote about this, he was a combat dog handler in Vietnam, which was, to say the very least, a very hazardous position to be in. So without further comment, I'm going to ask Barry to come forward and we'll hear from him.
Make sure. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
Hopefully? Good, okay. Pardon me?
Louder.
Louder?
Yeah, you got it.
The guys that are hard of hearing, this is my older brothers, you know, this drives me nuts. Okay. All right. Anyway, my story with the Vietnam begins as I graduated from St. Joe's in 1968. Now, when I started at St. Joe's in '64, there was no major war going on. Vietnam was happening, but the U.S. involvement was minimal. So we really weren't concerned that much about it. But as the years dragged on, it became quite obvious this wasn't going to end anytime soon. And the class of '68 in June knew one thing: they were waiting for us. The draft boards, everything. So I went down and met probably one of my best salesmen ever, called an Army recruiter. And he proposed, he said, look, I can get you the summer off, 90 days off, if you agree to try Officers Candidate School. Oh, 90 days off, this war could end in 90 days, this is great. Because he'd say, now look, if the war ends, we won't need you. I said, inside, I'm pretending to be heartbroken. Inside, I'm saying, man, I love this deal. I think I love it. Well, the summer came and went. September of '68, I show up at 401 North Broad Street, and if those that joined the service were drafted, that was the point of departure. In my case, I was sent to Fort Dix for basic training and what they called advanced infantry training. Total about 16, 18 weeks. And ironically, in advanced infantry training, we assaulted a Viet Cong village in 3 inches of snow. So I kind of felt like this isn't the real thing, but okay, do what you got to do. So I stayed with the OCS plan, and that sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia, the infantry capital of the Army. And at that point, that was the only school open, which he forgot to tell me at the recruiting thing. So it was infantry or else, a 26-week course. And I've already been through 6 or 8 weeks or so of training, and now I'm down here. And after about 10 weeks, it was a 26-week course, I decided I don't think I want to be an Army officer. Because I knew that if I stayed in, that's 4 years. If I drop out, I'm back to a 2-year man. But I'm also a draftee. So when I went into what they call TAC officers, these are the people training you. And I said, I think I've had enough. He said, well, you know where you're going. I said, well, I'm going there anyway. So I might as well just go. So I drop out and I go to what they call casual company. So casual companies where all the guys stay for about a week to get your orders, and everybody at Benning at that time is going one place. Prior to that period of time, we'd had Hamburger Hill, so they needed a lot of replacements. The time period, by the way, this is in '69. So I decided I'm in casual company. I see this building where you have all the Army schools that you can go to. I thought, let me try my luck, see what's available. And this nice white-haired lady, as I walk in, she goes, there's nothing you want that's available. Okay? That might be her calling me. We'll just ignore that one. All right, he's done. Now, she said, there's one option for you. It's called Scout Dog School. I'm there. Okay, I know nothing about this. Tell me about it. I said, okay, well, it's 12 weeks. If you take a dog with you, it's 11 days of travel plus a 30-day leave. So in my mind, I'm going 4 months. This war's got in. This is now '69. We've been in there 4 years, heavy fighting. They're having so-called peace talks, which we actually believe they were talking to each other. And I said, okay, I have no idea what this is about. She said, well, here's the story. There's only one place in the world we are using scout dogs, and it's not Germany. It's Vietnam, and that's it. He said, and it's a 30% casualty rate. Well, that's the same as infantry, so I thought, hey, might as well try my luck. I still have a dog. All the dogs well, I'll get that in a minute. So I signed up for that, and I thought, 4 months, this has got to end. So 12 weeks of training. So the first thing you do, you're in your barracks in the rear. It's just nice. Everybody's kind of being nice to you. You go to these kennels, and you get a German Shepherd. All the dogs we used, both in Sentry and Scout Dog, were German Shepherds. And a little reason for that is, first of all your dogs have a superior sense of hearing and smell. That's why you do it, significantly. A German Shepherd is a little bit more focused. They're not the friendliest dogs in the world. They're very loyal to their handler. They can be very difficult if you're not careful with them. You always make sure that, don't just run up and pet them, make sure the handler is nice to you. And especially your war dogs, as we call them, they were a little bit ornery. Usually they were sent by the owners, sold to the army because they were difficult to bring up at home. Anyway, I'd go down and we get a dog, and you spend a week training with a dog, because little things I never had a dog. I never walked a dog even. So you learn commands. A command called heel. That means that dog stays right by your side. You never let the dog pull you. You let the dog pull you, you're not going to make it. Okay, so for a week he learns to command. The key to getting to know the dog is you feed him, you give him water, and you take him for his walk. Then the shepherd knows you're his ticket out of the kennel. Okay. Now most of the dogs have already been since the Scout Dog program began in 1965 at the beginning of the war. One of the sergeants over there that was advising the South Vietnamese saw an opportunity to say, hey, we could use Scout Dogs to alert on any ambushes. So that was our main purpose. So we're trained in the field for the next 11 weeks. We'd spend a whole week out there in a pup tent in different environments. Now Fort Benning's, one thing about Benning, it's hot, especially in the summer. Otherwise it's a forest, okay? It's pine lands and all that. And we're taught to watch for two things mainly. The dog, and a German Shepherd especially, if you notice the ears. If you ever watch a Shepherd, they pop up all the time. Plus their nose, they're very sensitive. They're always kind of looking. All dogs are always doing that. Every time you take a dog off a walk, they're sniffing everywhere for a place to pee or whatever. So we have to focus them on alerts. So we would train and have guys stay out in the wooded area, and the dog would have to alert on that. You'd have to learn to read the dog. So you're watching the dog's head all the time. If the ears go up, the alert's very close. The nose could be a little iffy, but at least it gives you more time. So the two major things, and you're just training different environments. So each week we'd go to a little bit different place, different type of thing, train crossing the Chattahoochee River, which is the muddiest river in the world. And you never know who's down there with you. So, but anyway, we did that. We trained getting out of choppers. I would train with an OCS unit that was further along in their training, so you would see what it was like to train with a unit, so that they would have to learn what you do for them and get them used to you, because they had no idea either. So all this time I'm training and everything else, I'm kind of watching this thing. There's peace talks going on still. Anybody know? Because we're out in the field, we don't know what's going on. So while we're in Benning, while I'm at Fort Benning training, we put a man on the moon. Kennedy went off a bridge, and no peace talks. So I go home. We have Woodstock. I did not go to Woodstock because I'm not about to live in the mud. And I'd never heard of half of the groups, because you're down in Fort Benning, it's country and western. It's hillbilly music. When you heard it, when you could hear it. Nothing against that. I just had no idea what they're doing. Besides, the 30-day leave before you're going to Nam is probably one of the longest stretches, because you know where you're going, your family knows. And, there's a little bit of tension there. But you just go through it, because what I did is my secret there, but it didn't work. But I said, my orders are only for Oakland Army Base. That's a big base. I may never leave Oakland. So I wish you'd dream me every night. So I go on the flight, get out to Oakland, and I walk in and report, and they give me a disc. They said, if you have the letter M, you're going to get a change in orders. And I'm looking at him, and I said, damn, I made it. Right at the edge. I elbowed the guy next to me. Yeah, I got an M too. You got an M too. Well, we realized, hey, I guess they're going to change all our orders. This is great. Maybe something happened. We go to the barracks, and one of the guys had a sister that was at a local college. Hey, we go out and party tonight. So we're getting plans, and an MP comes in. He goes, nope, not being to pick on MPs. But he comes in and goes, oh, we have you in the wrong barracks, so we'll have to move you. Very polite and nice, and I thought, they've never been nice to us in my entire period. What the hell? So we get on this. Well, we're getting on a bus. I thought we were just moving to barracks. Oh, this is a big base. And the bus leaves and goes here. And I said, I think it just went through the gates. On a highway. Next thing you know, it's dark. Travis Air Force Base. A big warehouse. Now we're in khaki uniforms. You come in there and you're changed to fatigues. Jungle fatigues. So if there's any doubt in my mind where we're going, we're going. on a Continental Airlines. This is a civilian plane. You have stewardesses. I'm like, all of us, there's 200 GIs on this plane. It's not a C-130, we're going to fly and go from base to base. We go to Alaska. Everybody has to go off the plane for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So whatever they do. Then you get back on. Next stop, Japan. That's the only time I was ever in Japan for about, again, 30 minutes. Get a new crew. This crew is a little more somber, because the next stop is a place called Tansanode Air Force Base. And that's where we land. And then I remember the pilot saying, just like a commercial flight, temperature's 90 degrees. Now, my entire tour in Nam, it never got any cooler than 90 degrees. And the humidity was equal to or higher. And I thought, I got off there, I said, this is a very bad place to be. Go to reception centers, finally get to my, about 2 weeks of, well, not even that, about a week or a few days that they receive you in there and they give you countless shots because of all the diseases you could pick up there. You know, they have these machines that go to each side of your arm, and by the time you're done, you're all half crazy. So then I go to a scout dog reception center where they try to accommodate, saying, you know what you learned over here, here's what you're going to learn over here. So for about a week. Then you get to your unit. In I was assigned to the 1st Air Cavalry Division. Now, to give you an idea, a scout dog platoon was about 20 to 25 handlers, a vet tech who would be like a dog medic. You have one, maybe even two, depending. You had an officer was usually a lieutenant and a senior NCO. The officers and the senior NCOs never went out with dogs. They were administrative. They might go out with you on a mission just to see what's going on. So you learned from the guys that were already there. The same at Fort Benning. Most of the people training us were veterans of actually doing it. So every time they tell you, hey, this is what you really got to watch. That's how you learn to watch everything about the dog, his reaction. And you know, the policy was better to call alert and be wrong than not call alert and be wrong. And I kind of followed that philosophy, making a few lieutenants and officers a little angry when I would slow the missions down. But you know, hey, what's my hurry? So I'm in 2 bases, but for cavalry, I was with something called the 34th IPSD, one of 20 Army scout dog units. The Marines also had scout dogs, because they actually trained with us for about the last 2 weeks in Fort Benning. I think they had two dog platoons in the Marines. They were further up north. So my base was, as I said, Benoit, which was relatively safe. It had been hammered in the Tet Offensive, but now it was safe. Our forward base was a happy place called Quan Loy. For the Viet Cong, it was a day's march to Cambodia, their sanctuary. For us, it was about a 2-day march. So that's where weighted down and not in the shape that they're in. They're used to running. So the forward base was an old French plantation that we took over. The airfield was his private 9-hole golf course. We left it with his mansion and had a pool that surprisingly during the entire tour we were there, never seemed to get hit with anything. The base was always under attack from the air. Right before I came in country, they had tried to overrun Quan Loy. It was a big battle. We drove them off, inflicting pretty heavy losses. They were still finding some of the enemy casualties when I was there, almost a month later. But they didn't try it again, thank God. So what we did is we go there to our forward. Now here's what the operation was about. You take your dog, we would be sent out to companies operating in the field. So Quan Loy was a fairly big base. Of course, it's in Indian country, as we call it, or enemy land. And then you've got the various fire bases that were smaller units, maybe battalion size. That might be 200 men, maybe more than that. And each one had a company. Those companies would rotate going out actually into the jungle with the idea of keeping an eye on them, trying to disrupt the VC, trying to locate them. Approximately 40% of Vietnam is jungle. It's a country that's about as long as Chile. It's about 1,500 miles long, a rather narrow country. At its widest point might be 200 miles. Our base at Benoit was 60 miles from Quan Loy, so we flew all the time. And Chinooks, I think somebody here was a Chinook pilot, Hueys, and even C-130s. Once in a while we drove, one truck. We didn't like that idea at all, but once in a while we had to do it. We were lucky we weren't ambushed along the way. But from Quan Loy, you would go out to a battalion fire base. Sometimes they were called Fire Base Francis, Fire Base Ellen, the 2 names I can remember. Then, again, you're back on the chopper, and then you're going out in the field. And I remember my first mission looking out thinking, this is like I saw it on TV. This is really not good. I don't like this at all. The terrain sucks, This is bad. And you don't even see where you're landing. When you land, you get off the chopper. You join an infantry unit in the field. And it's not like they're all saying glad to see you. Nobody's smiling. I figured, this is not good. Well, you get off here, the casualties are put on the other side, if there are any. So my first missions, I go out there and I have a shotgun with me. The shotgun is an experienced handler. Most of them were good guys. Some of them were a little wary because they were short. Short means they don't want to get shot by some new guy. We were called FNGs. Now, NG is new guy. I don't think I have to tell you what the other letter stands for. Okay. So I didn't feel very comfortable there because they'd look you over and they'd say, I'm not dirty enough, okay, to look like I've had any experience. So the grunts are saying, okay, here we go again. Fortunately for me, I had the best deal in the world. I had a dog named Max. Now, Max's background was great. I was his third handler. Max went to Vietnam in 1967 with a fellow named Manny Almeida. They hit the hot stuff pretty quickly. He alerted on the Viet Cong platoon that actually surrendered, which was very rare. It was much easier to kill them than to capture them. And they included an officer. It's featured in I didn't bring it with me. There's a newspaper heading I meant to bring it, I forgot about it, from his hometown, describing what Max had done, and from his first handler. Both were wounded, but they survived. Then following that, he had a second handler named Bob France, who I would meet. He would turn him over to me, so I was Max's third handler. Well, the nice thing about Max and a well-trained German Shepherd, they know what to do. Max is off the chopper. He's looking for a fight. Because he wasn't the friendliest of dogs. I was actually one of the ones that could handle him. He was over 100 pounds. And that was equal to the weight of most of the VC. So they didn't want to mess with him either. So grunts kind of felt a little more comfortable because Max knew what to do. I wouldn't even have to say search is what you tell the dog to do. Max was already looking for somebody. If he was looking for a fight with another creature in the field or whatever. So that helped me a little bit because the first time out on patrol, they put me out front and I say, holy shit, what do I do? I was trained in this. This is the jungle. This is ridiculous. I have no idea where I am. This is a narrow trail. They could be around the corner. What's going on here? There could be anything out in the field. Because you'd certainly learn that the jungles of Vietnam included tigers, elephants, every kind of snake in the world. Everything was either dangerous or poisonous. Their mosquitoes were double our size. You didn't even swat them after a while. You say, excuse me. Leeches. If you ever look at a guy's helmet in Vietnam, you always see this little bottle. That's called bug juice. So if you get a leech fall on you, you squeeze that. You do not do this, which is what I did. Then it bleeds. And when you bleed in the tropics, it goes on for 3 days. You don't heal quickly because you don't get cool weather or anything like that. And you're out in dirt. And nobody really gives a crap. Oh, you got a little scratch. You're okay. You're better off than the other guys. So there's no real sympathy for you. You just learn by doing it. So when I got out there the first mission, I looked at Max, and Max moved his head a little bit to the left. I said, I don't know what to do. I got an alert. And the grunts were looking at me like, I don't know about this guy. Anyway, they checked out, and thankfully one of the grunts found some clothing nearby. Everything in the Army was metric. So we'd go 10 meters. Remember, a football field's about 30 meters. That was how you thought. How many football fields away is this enemy if you're going to call an artillery? So you want to make sure 30 meters, which is a meter's approximately a yard. So you had to think about that in your mind. So I'm going to say we went in about 10 meters and he found the clothing, which could have been there for 2 weeks, but didn't matter. It let me a little bit off the hook. So I got through the first mission. We were supposed to assault a Viet Cong held village. Intelligence had screwed it up because we had already done it the year before. The sergeant in the group had done it, participated, and he was trying to tell the officers, hey, we've already been there, done that. It involved going through about a lake, what looked like a lake. And I'm going there with a dog, and I'm thinking in the movies, this is where the machine gunner picks you off. I'm saying, come on, move, And I'm thinking, who else is in this water with me? But as it turned out, what we marched through was the village. They had wiped it out. It was an enemy-held village. No civilians were there. And I don't know what the totals were anyway, but it had been done. So I ended that one, and next time I'm going out, this was a little different. Every mission was different, and every soldier that went out, every handler would have a different story. Some guys seemed to hit the stuff all the time. We had, other than a sniper fire on my first mission, that was very brief. We didn't have any other action. So the next time I'm going out, I'm joining a platoon. The platoon only had 18 men. Nobody at that point had full strength. So a platoon was supposed to be, say, 30 men. 20 at the most. Some of them had officers, some of them didn't. So between casualties, which would be killed, and mostly wounded. Wounded was the thing, because most of the wounded men were never replaced, or they, if the as I say, hey, this really works. They do work. You can alert, and there they were. And there was no accolades. You did your job. No one could say, hey, good job. No, yeah, good. We didn't get them this time. But what they call a Cobra gunship was those narrow, small helicopter that was very effective. I don't know whether they got them or not. I wasn't that concerned. I stayed with the unit, felt pretty good about it. And the next day with the unit, we're out in the field. And sometimes what they would do is take the poor guys that are out in the field all the time and bring them a hot meal. In this case, steaks. They actually came out, set up something like this. Very surprising they could do it, because you're out in the middle of the jungle. So we're all getting steaks, and I'm explaining to everybody, stay away from the dog, because naturally he doesn't, he sees the meal, he wants it too. So as I'm talking to you guys, here's the unit, right? Behind me is the radio man, that's the last one in. He sits at the tree, and the other side of the tree is Max. He puts his plate right here. In a second, Max is taking a steak. Those guys howled. The radio man got my steak, because I'm going in 3 days, so I have it pretty good. Those guys are going to stay out in the field all the time. So they knew that hey, you have it pretty good compared to us. And the only reason we did is because the dogs could only stay out in the field roughly 4 days. I think it was 3 nights and 4 days, or at most, unless you got trapped. If you trapped, you stayed. If there was action, you stayed. But the dogs, mostly because of the heat, they weren't effective after 3 or 4 days in the jungle. Because you're walking what they call clicks, which is a mile. You could do 10 clicks a day, and you have a 50-pound rucksack, or I think it was more like 20 pounds to be that you had on your pack on you. And so we weren't the swiftest of soldiers, because you're weighted down and you're in unbelievable heat. You'd stop a couple times, but that was it. So after about 3 days, if there was nothing going on, they'd send me back in. And so we had kind of short with that would give us a break in the action. The poor guys out there, they stayed there all the time. So every time I went out, it was a different mission. You never knew what to expect. Same with a lot of our other guys. So one big break for us came in 1970. Nixon announced Vietnamization of the war. That was a godsend. Now, we knew it wasn't going to work, but it told that the idea there was the South Vietnamese troops were now going to do what we did. They're going to be out there and patrolling. We'll be backing them up. Very slow process. But what it did for me is that they sent I think the 1st Division was sent home. We got their dog handlers that had time left. When they sent a unit home, what they did is the guys with a lot of time left, they transferred to other units. The guys that didn't have much time left, they transferred into the 1st Division. So it looked like 40,000 men are coming home. They were coming home anyway. But it worked. It was a nice ploy, and I guess it fooled some people. But what it did do with Vietnamization is reduce the amount of times we were needed in the field. Suddenly we weren't going out as often, and the missions were shorter. Still dangerous. My most dangerous mission was the final mission I went out on. That was at a fire base, Francis, which I didn't like because that was deeper into the jungle. It was a newer base, and the backup was ARVN, or South Vietnamese troops, which you never knew we could rely on. But I always checked with the grunts and say, what's going on? It's pretty quiet. Well, I knew this wasn't quiet here. I'm on the chopper, ready to go out and join a unit. The colonel comes running out and said, "Change of mission. We got a rescue." So you get ready, right? When it's a rescue mission, I'm going out and I have to get off that chopper. The choppers do not land; they hover. At least the Hueys I was on, and almost every Huey and Chinook that I got on had bullet holes in it somewhere. Well, we're going down to land at the spot where it chose to, and I'm getting ready to jump off, and all of a sudden, the chopper goes straight up. If I'm going forward, I'm done. I'm going to fall 40 feet to my death. I fall backwards, thankfully, and I grab the center of the pole. All helicopters, all Chewies kept the doors open. They never closed the doors. So if you didn't like heights, tough. So I'm holding on to that. Now, Max is true for all dogs. They have to They have to be out the window. So Max has to be out there. I'm holding on to him like, Max, this is kind of wary. I've got my gear, my M16, holding on to that. The machine gunners are firing away. And of course, Max is seeing the rounds that are being extracted flying right by him, and he's trying to bite them. So I'm saying, that's not a good idea. I pull him in. Well, what happened was that they had given us the wrong coordinates to where we were to land. We were landing right where they were. If I had jumped off that chopper as I was supposed to, I was right there. I was a target. They would have a hard time missing me. We had a price on our head because of the effectiveness of the dogs. The Viet Cong got a reward if they killed a dog man and his dog. which wasn't, a comforting feeling. So fortunately, what happened is a Sky Raider came in, dropped what we called Willie Pete, which is like a white phosphorus. It's almost like napalm. That stopped all the enemy fire. A platoon came out, and we landed. We put the casualties on. They were all wounded, no KIAs, thankfully. And then we went in pursuit of them. We found a small blood trail, but nothing else. And we stayed out a couple of nights searching the area, cleaning up. We never found where the white phosphorus was dropped. It's amazing. You say, I saw it come down. It's right here. No, the jungle was that way. You could get easily lost. You had to be very careful. So we finished those missions, and I was scheduled to go home in June of 70. I applied for an early out, and because of the Vietnamization, we weren't needed as much, so I was approved. My sister Mary Ellen, who's not with us anymore, helped coordinate it here. I'm a St. Joe graduate, and I'm going to Villanova for graduate school. So, but then President Nixon decided that sanctuary, we've had enough of it. We launched an invasion of Cambodia, and we were one of the dog units because it's from Quan Loy, our happy forward base. So they call me in and say, we might need you. Now in the meantime, Max, okay, I had to turn Max in. Now, normally I would have expected the next new handlers coming in to take Max. They didn't do that with me. They sent him back to the scout with a holding center for dogs in a place called Long Bin. And I had to take him back there, and it was the first time they hit me. He cried, and I said, holy shit. He was a hell of a dog. He saved a lot of lives, and including mine. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? Do I go back and get the dog? He said, no, you're going to go out with a shotgun. So I cleaned off my M16. Fortunately, or whatever, the way the invasion of Cambodia worked, it was rather swift and very, very successful, though not without losses, not without casualties. We captured a ton of equipment. I'd still seen them bring in and captured Russian equipment all day long from this mission. So I was still able to go home in June and get to school in June of 70, so my tour was done. Now the dogs, at that point, we had no idea what they were doing with the dogs. We were told you couldn't take the dog home because they had picked up blood diseases. Some of it was probably Agent Orange leftover. That was all over the place. They didn't really realize the effect of Agent Orange. That was called weed killer. A little bit stronger than weed killer. And after a while, we started to think, well, what's going to happen? Now, the war ends for us in 72 as far as American involvement. It completely ends in 75. The dogs were supposedly transferred over to South Vietnamese units, which we thought, our view of the South Vietnamese Army was 1/3 of it was qualified to fight the North. The other 2/3 were conscripts, so-so. Maybe you could rely on them, maybe you couldn't. Not enough to beat the North if you wanted it. The only reason that the Vietnamese held out as long as they did is because we had air support, which we had to air and artillery. We were still allowed to do that, despite the truce, or the treaty that supposedly ended the war. After Nixon was stepped down, that ended all support for the Vietnamese from us, and the country fell within 6 months. Very frustrating to watch that. And then gradually we realized, what happened to all the dogs? And we found out later that only 200 of the dogs came home. Now, to put in perspective, there were about 3,500 scout dogs, handlers, and probably about 5,000 scout dogs. And now I'm talking the scout dogs, not the MP, the sentry dogs, because there was an equal number of them. Both are all German shepherds. And so we figured, what was the deal there? And they really don't know. We know that only 200 dogs apparently came home, and one of them wasn't Max. And so I had to think about that and realize, hey, I came home, Almeida came home, Sergeant France, maybe 150 to 200 GIs who we saved with the alerting on ambushes and shit like that. But the real hero, no. He didn't know any better. He just did his job. Sorry about that, okay. It always happens. It's sometimes a little tough to do these. I'm going to finish for now, but I will be happy to answer questions if anybody has any. Don't be afraid. Thank you very much. Thank you. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions. So I think I've kept you here long enough.
Excellent job.
Thank you. Harry and fellow veteran. A couple of Vietnam veterans here I wanted to recognize. My fellow dog handler and the 212th MPs, which was a very dangerous job, especially in that era. Glad you're here and glad to, I think we have a pilot somewhere that probably our paths may or may not have crossed, but that was a great pilots, helicopter pilots. I wasn't sure which was the most dangerous of all jobs. When the weather's beautiful, they can fly and they're the easiest target in the world. If the weather's crappy, they aren't the easy targets, but they don't know where they're flying. They have amazing jobs that they were able to do, the amount of people that they rescued, the amount of times they could get them in the field. I think half the choppers at one time or another were shot down. Some of these guys just picked them up and kept going again. There was no easy job in that place. So if there's no questions, I thank you all.